can have,
Just this one, or we do go with Plan A and B?
Clay?
I think if you just put it between them, they'll be able to. Here's, Charlie, when we were doing one of the meetings, they went in closed session, left the mics and the video on. People were standing around up near the mics talking.
I heard they got a lot on.
Yes,
We got a couple of phone calls the next day on that too.
okay.
So,
Thank you, I appreciate you.
Once again, he comes through in the clutch.
And so in the future, when I need it done, I'll just grab that, I'll put, do you want me to leave it there for now, or what do you want me to do, put it back up?
Put it back up because they won't use it for the GSAT-C.
Okay, and then I just stick it.
9 and 10 work, 11 can be manipulated to work.
Okay, but 9 and 10, we're good. Perfect, thank you, sir. Yeah, I did hear that.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Okay. Anything going on today that's gonna turn into something? Okay.
No, the only thing that, I'm gonna pull Dick aside after the meeting and ask him. He didn't wanna have planning meetings when there's only one thing to discuss, but it appears that there's a development, potential development on Marathon Falls Road, that falls within our sewer area. That we're gonna need to either, if you're doing a direct regional impact letter, and the city's gonna say they don't have, the sewer's not available, but. Hey, Mr. Charlie, wanna,
Hello, good morning.
have the area to not, but we still understand the ramifications of this either way.
Yes, yes. I believe that we need to, the planning people need to continue to meet every month.
Yeah,
We're,
whether we have specific items or not, just to
Correct.
have a conversation.
yes, and people have an opportunity to get together and talk about things.
Okay.
Dick talked to me yesterday about, he said, Clay, I don't think anybody wants to do what you're trying to do. Clay, you are out of sync with the rest of the board members on fire hydrants going to, fire department purchase. I said, I don't think so, but we'll talk about it. And then he said to me, Joseph has got a lot of money projects that need to be done. We're getting into a money crisis. I said, okay. I said, Joseph's finding the stuff, and he needs to bring it up to, and I think the planning committee is where that needs to be talked about, and kinda, hey, these are the absolute
Testing,
must-dos.
testing.
We gotta do these now. These, we can wait on, these are the ones that we wanna do. And you gotta have that discussion with people, and the people who are interested will come sit and listen. Fanny and people like that.
Do they vote you off the island or something?
And I mean.
Or y'all just like spending our money on elections? Which one
That's,
is it?
we like doing that. Man, we like having elections. We get to do all that stuff.
You can have a special election for 6 months and then a regular election?
Yes.
God, I love God.
So, talk to Dick, yes. Continue to have meetings. Dick is feeling very,
ma'am.
he's feeling very, very, good. After that last meeting, he is large and in charge. He's really,
Oh, the development meeting?
no, the meeting, the,
Planning meeting?
yeah, yeah.
The one we had to vote on 10%?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Two people called me and said, I didn't know we were supposed to be having the first meeting. I thought we were only having the second meeting. I said, it's okay. It's
I'll honk
okay."
at Gwen's house more time.
Well,
Does everybody on the board have access to Microsoft Teams? No?
So there's only one who's.
That's all, that's what we live on.
So I think that would be the way that I
need to
could
put
share
something on my phone.
the information.
is that okay?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll change it to whatever you want. Make it anything you want to make it, or if you think the wording is poor.
It's part of the Microsoft 365 subscription.
I don't know if you want all this one, okay?
We'll pay for that.
Then if you could have somebody,
Because I'm trying to figure out the best way
4
to
days ago,
pop
I
up
called me, I didn't pick up on it.
a folder for like the planning committee, a folder for the finance committee, where they have access to data.
I think you're all.
Check, 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 check.
Okay, we'll take it off. Say the first part.
I've done that before where somebody asked me to do something and I got up there and all of a sudden I went.
And don't worry about it. You just look around, we'll take care of it. I got a good
For now.
You leave the implication.
Nope.
Not that I appreciate it. Good morning. Yeah, I don't have to do, no, I gotta push forward.
Somebody else is turning.
Okay. You're here early, that's the reason. It's almost time, yes. You're putting the mics on, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, I don't do that. We start on time. We're gonna move right along, so don't be hesitant to say, I make a motion, stuff like that.
Are you in a hurry?
Well, no. Short answer is no, but I don't wanna get everybody up here and say, we're not out here, so I'm not doing. Good morning, Dick.
Morning. Morning, Dick. Morning.
Morning.
Good morning. All right.
How
You
about
too.
if I,
Yeah, you too, buddy.
that way Fanny won't have to go around me.
Okay, that's absolutely great. Good thinking.
Was asked this morning at breakfast, is there anything going on with the water authority? And I went, holy moly. Whoops. We don't have time for this conversation.
Wasn't a reporter, was it?
No.
Good. Working.
Good morning. I know.
Morning, Quinn.
Good morning.
We're waiting for the gal.
When I told Alvetta last night, I should have been an electrician, apparently. I told Alvetta I should have been an electrician. Yeah, she's feeling good.
Good morning and welcome to the Spalding County Water and Sewerage Facilities Authority regular scheduled meeting. It is Wednesday, March 16th, 2022, about 8:30. Please silence all cell phones and all other electronic devices. I'd like to ask Jeff to lead us in the invocation and Cheryl to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Dear Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to be here today, and we ask that your hand be on us as we make decisions for this organization and for this community, our customers, and that you lead, guide, and direct us, and that you be with us as we leave this meeting today. We ask these things in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Move that fast. Yeah, I know the feeling. Oops.
Item number 4, motion to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 6-0. 7-0, excuse me. Item number 5, citizen comments. Speakers must sign up prior to the meeting and provide their names, addresses, and topics they wish to discuss. Speakers must direct their remarks to the authority and not to individual members or to the audience. Personal disagreements with individual members or county employees are not a matter of public concern, and personal attacks will not be tolerated. The chairman has the right to limit your comments in the interest of disposing of the authority's business in an efficient and respectful manner. Speakers will be allocated 3 minutes to speak on their chosen topics as they relate to matters pertaining to the jurisdiction of this authority. No questions will be asked by any of the members during the citizen comments. Outbursts from the audience will not be tolerated. Common courtesy and civility are expected at all times during the meeting. No speakers will be permitted to speak more than 3 minutes or more than once unless the authority votes to suspend this rule. Secretary Treasurer, do we have any?
No, sir, we do not have anyone signed up for public comment.
Thank you. Item number 6, consider approval of the minutes from the February 16th, 2022 regular scheduled meeting and the February 23, 2022 work session. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Unanimous, thank you. Item number 7, financial report. Consider approval of the financial report as presented by the general manager. Good
So-
morning, General Manager.
Good morning, how are you?
Good.
The March 2022 report is in your notebook. The total revenues are current as of February of 2022. So one thing you're going to notice is our customer count went up from last month a little bit. The total revenues received to date are $6,147,424. And then the breakdown of that, we're still running about the 74 to 26% water sales to base rate ratio. Everything is looking good regarding where the projections were. We are working with the city of Griffin to get a couple more data points on water loss that we are not billing for broken pipe and uncollected debt. So that'll start coming into this report as we get it.
Chairman, I move we accept the report.
All right, I have a motion to accept. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I will say that I appreciate Joseph and his peeling away a lot of this mystery about the report and the unmetered water, lost water, some of those issues that have given us a false picture before. So we're getting past all that, and I like that.
Thank you for that comment, Dick. If you all don't understand that comment about lost water and everything, then grab hold of Joseph sometime and get him to walk you through it so that you understand why that's important to us and why we're moving into that direction. All right? All those in favor of accepting the report, please raise your hand. Thank you, Ms. Fanny. All right? Unanimous action. Report is accepted.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, what part of that report was the meter and fire hydrant somewhere? Is that the water loss part?
No, ma'am, that's going to be the water superintendent report.
Oh, okay, we haven't done that.
No, ma'am.
We haven't got that far yet.
Okay.
Overachiever.
No. Okay. Sorry.
No, excuse me. Number 8, water superintendent report.
So
Manager?
there's the new development still in process are Sun City pods 18, 19, and 20, totaling 110 lots. The water meter installs from year to date from January 2022 and February 2022 total 39 new meters. We've relocated 1. The fire hydrant summary, as you see, we jumped from 9 to 117, and I'll tell you the reason why this happened. We have started tracking every hydrant that's being touched and serviced. So this is the beginning phase of capturing the data that we'll implement into a work order system. So this number is going to start getting more accurate, where you see we do touch more hydrants than, say, 10 or 15 a month. And what this talks about is anytime we touch a hydrant, we are looking at it from the standpoint of, do the steamer caps work? Do they leak? Do we need to paint them? Do we need to dig out around the hydrant to get the full circle where the fire department ain't gonna, they'll be able to get a full rotation on the hydrant wrench and things like that. So we're doing a good job of touching every hydrant that we have.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Do I have a motion to accept the water superintendent's report?
So-
I
Second.
have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 8-0, thank you. Number 9, old business. Update on the Highland Mills Sewer Area Intergovernmental Agreement. General Manager?
So you know, part of the IGA, there was a laundry list of things that we had to address before the city of Griffin would accept the sewer flow. I just want to let you know that we are trying to wrap up those, and we hope to have them by the end of the month. We're still waiting on a couple of things for the Dundee Mills lift station due to supply chain issues. GWI's had a hard time of getting some components. So, which leads me into the next, the letter. As you see, this letter was drafted basically explaining the hurdles that we had to overcome with the city of Griffin. They graciously allowed us to divert the sewer flow once we get that outfall line successfully pressure test. From my understanding, we had one small issue to rectify. The test was completed yesterday, and we hope to have the sewer diverted as of Friday this week.
Diverted to the city line?
Yes, ma'am.
May I make a comment here? You know, too often you hear the fractured relationships, particularly in this group, city and county, but with the supply chains issues he mentioned and everything not being exactly complete, they've been very helpful letting us go on and get that done and finish the remainder of the things. You know, they could have said no. Yeah. So I'm pleased that we've reached a point where the two groups are working in a very amicable manner. That's a huge step forward, in my opinion. And it'll keep us from getting in trouble with EPD. We can go on and get this done and finish a few little details as the parts come in, so.
That's correct.
I think that's a tipping point, in my opinion.
Because remember, when we applied for that 90-day extension, that 90-day extension was prefaced with the fact that once the outfall was built and passed and tested, that we were going to divert the flow and stop letting effluent leave the plant. Well, in the IGA stated that all the items needed to be fixed before the city of Griffin would accept the flow. So we worked with them, and between Brandon and Brant, we came up with a good solution. So they were very helpful.
So, Mr. Chairman, so when you say all of the items have been completed, you mean the inspection of the lines before, I guess I don't understand.
No, ma'am, on Exhibit B in the IGA, there were roughly 9 items that needed to be addressed. You had all the manholes in the Dundee, Highland Mills area needed to be sprayed and lined. You had the lift stations that needed to be converted over to the city's SCADA system. You had electrical panel work that needed to be done at Dundee. You had pump PMs that needed to be done. So there was a laundry list of things, items that had to be checked off. So not all those items have been addressed because we're still waiting on components.
So items at the Springs plant or items?
Items within that service area. So the Springs plant, yeah, there's 2 lift stations. You have the Highland Mills lift station and the Dundee Mills lift station that pump to the Springs plant. So there was things that needed to be addressed in the service area before the plant's flow could be diverted to the city of Griffin.
So, excuse me for.
Go ahead.
So the Highland Mill affluent is still gonna be coming through our plant in order to go into the city sewer line. How will the Highland Mill, from the lift station at Highland Mill, it will come, how does that connect to the city?
It's gonna be tied into the new outfall. So we have to cut that over and get it from its current tie-in point, which is our plant, and put it on the outfall line. That hasn't been done yet.
So, and that's not part of our IGA with the city of Griffin?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. Have we seen this, any draft of what it is that you're talking about?
The intergovernmental agreement?
Uh-huh.
Yes, ma'am, it was signed late last year, on September 28th, I believe. Yes.
Okay, I'll go back and look at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it just the lift stations that's holding us up? The SCADA part of it? Or
The
is
sc-
it rehab?
So the Dundee Mills lift station rehab is the one that holding us up. We're still waiting on the electrical panel. And when they did the PM inspection on that station, one of the pumps wasn't megging right with the electrical. So in order to pull that pump, they were gonna have to literally start cutting it out of the hole. Well, when they went to do it, they found that the check valves were bleeding by, so we had to replace those. We're still waiting on those check valves to show up to complete that work. But it's mainly the Dundee lift station that is our issue. The Highland Mills lift station is on the city SCADA system. And we plan on just transitioning the power and water over when both stations are ready to go.
You're just waiting on the control panel, basically.
That's right. Yes, sir.
We are too.
All right, I request a motion to authorize the chair to submit a letter to the city manager on behalf of the board thanking Dr. Brent Keller and his department for their help throughout this entire process.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second? I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Yes. Why are we doing this?
Because by the letter of the IGA, they would not have to accept anything until everything was complete. And they're allowing us to go on and put the sewer effluent into their system without everything being completed on a good faith move, knowing that we will complete it. But because of the supply chain issues, they can't get some pumps and electrical panels and things that we need. So they could have stopped the whole transfer, and then we'd have been in violation of the EPD. We were extended 90 days. We'd be in violation. So it could have been a train wreck if they had not been willing to work with us, let us move ahead, and know that we're going to finish those checklist items.
So my concern with that is that when you say they, Grant Keller doesn't have a vote on that board. So the letter, if there is a letter, should be going to the city board of commissioners. Because whatever Grant Keller is doing, he's doing it because he's getting paid to do it. So if we're sending a letter, let's send it to the authority, the authorizing power, rather than an individual person who is an employee of the city, because it's not Grant's decision.
Pull it up.
It's actually going to the city manager.
It's going to the city manager. Just a second, you can
Well,
see
what
it.
I heard was a letter,
Submitted to the city manager on behalf of the
Yeah.
board, thanking Dr. Keller and his department for help throughout the entire process. There's the letter.
I think that letter's appropriate. I think it's exactly what happened.
Yes, Ms. Fanny?
Mr. Chair, may I? Even though, Grant is saying Brent Keller, we know that Brent, even though we might have some things with Brent, he's done so much, as I say, to really help us. So I think it's always good to say thank you. To me, a thank you means a whole lot. It means more than money to me sometimes, or most times. If somebody appreciates what I have done, the efforts in the future perhaps will be even better. I think it just makes it, even though I know what you're saying. So if it's going to the city, fine. But I think also somewhere Mr. Keller need to be mentioned.
I absolutely agree.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, and this is just me, but if we start going and, thanking the people in finance, when are we gonna start thanking everybody else? And I'm just saying,
do that.
this is Brandt's job. He gets paid lots of money to do this. It is in the scope of what he's been directed to do, which is to work with us through this process. We got a contract that says that. I mean, I'm just saying, Brand doesn't run that. I know he's in charge of it, but he does not have a vote. And so regardless of what he says, the liability is not on him, it is on the board of city commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a motion on the floor?
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Yes. Ms.
But
Cheryl.
isn't it resolved in that it's from our chairman to Ms. O'Connor?
It's from,
It's not to Brent Keller?
No, it is
It's
not.
to the city manager?
you can say, I think I can't read it from here, well, yes, to the City of Griffin, attention Jessica O'Connor. And so the City of Griffin meeting
It's like a commendation to Brent.
Yeah.
board,
Mr. Chairman,
okay?
I'm gonna call the question.
All right, all those in favor of the chairman signing a letter to the City of Griffin, raise your hand. All those all those opposed, all right. 8-1. Thank you, motion carries. Item number 2, update on the transfer of sewer flows and customers of the City of Griffin. General Manager?
So we are still working. Do what?
This is a different issue. This is a
So-
customer issue.
Yeah,
Customer-
so as part of the IGA, one of the outcomes is gonna be all the wastewater customers in the Highland Mills and Dundee Mills area that flowed to the Springs plant, we're gonna be given over to the city of Griffin. So we're still, as per the agreed-upon IGA, we have worked with the city of Griffin, and a letter went out to the customers to allow that switchover to happen
Good.
That letter went out when?
on February 25th,
Okay.
to prepare them, and the customers will actually get a net decrease on their sewer bill,
How many customers is that?
roughly 120.
Question.
Yes, ma'am?
So, their sewer bill will go down in cost, the customers that are gonna be transferred over.
Correct.
But will they automatically have to be a part of the regular city system, whereas they pay yard waste, they pay stormwater fees, because they're not paying that with us now?
No, ma'am. The only thing that's going to change is the sewer. They're still our water customer.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Great thought, thank you. All right. That's just an update issue. Update on the FY '22 fire hydrant project, General Manager?
So the project is now officially complete. The last hydrant was installed roughly a week ago. So the authority has installed 31 new hydrants within the county.
That was what we had, we had planned 20.
26, and then the board approved an additional 5 to get close to the $250,000 budgeted amount. We actually came in at 246, so we came in under budget for all 31 hydrants.
This is one of those low-hanging fruit that we have taken and just moved on out with to be able to get done. Okay?
I know that it's an update, and this is not an item, but at some point, are we going to be discussing, our responsibilities in terms of fire hydrant maintenance and,
Yes.
installation?
New business
New
number
New
one.
business number one.
Okay.
Thank you. Once again, overshooting. All right. Secretary Treasurer Steve Ledbetter to discuss his findings on why the county stopped funding water main relocation projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These items are owned by the utility. The utility did not pay for the easement for these items, but they piggybacked off of the Georgia DOT right-of-way. The utility is responsible for the cost of moving if they do not own the right-of-way. So that is why we no longer pay for the move of these utilities.
This is a
And I
policy
understand that.
issue.
It's
This-
really the law, if you will. But that brings up a point that Joseph's mentioned earlier, that in the future, if we're running water lines or maybe sewer lines past bridges, that I'd seriously consider buying right-of-way beyond the DOT right-of-way. So if this ever comes up again, we're not required to pay for this move. So bridges are a warning that if you use DOT right-of-way, you're stuck with this, so.
And it's getting ready to happen to us.
Correct, and could I add where I had a conversation with Charles Penny this morning regarding the Flint River Bridge project, and I told him that we would like to, I want an order of magnitude cost for if we were to acquire a private easement on the south side of the bridge where we're gonna put the water line main, or water line relocation, what that easement acquisition cost would be, where the board can understand we can either choose to go in a private easement or we put it on the south side of the bridge where the alignment of the new bridge is going north. We don't ever foresee them realigning it and coming south, but not to say that it couldn't be four-laned later or expanded. So we'll bring that to you.
I think the four-lane possibility is very real in the next number of years, and we'd be stuck all over again.
Yeah, so bottom line is we're getting ready to say we're not ever doing what we've been doing. We're making a new policy on where we're going to put the water lines. We're gonna get them into an easement that we're in charge of. It's going to be expensive to do what we're getting ready to have to do.
Well, it's expensive moving the line on the DOT right away too.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you waiting, what?
It's expensive to move the line on the DOT right away also. It's $250,000.
Yeah.
That one's 900,
Well, the Flint River Bridge project estimate is around $925,000. Because it's a long line relocation. We're basically going on, west of the Blaylock Fire Station all the way, what's that road, Brian? Is it, it's the first road to the, yeah, I think it is Ellis Road. So it's a substantial,
It's
12-inch line.
it's a 12-inch line, yes. And we're gonna have to go under a creek, but
We're gonna have to bore across creek and then cross under the river.
so that realignment is actually, they're taking away the curve, and the bridge is gonna be positioned, it's gonna be turned north. So what we'll do is we'll show where we're going, and then what it would look like with an easement as well, and a order of magnitude cost for that easement acquisition. So Charles is gonna reach out to Steve Manley and get what this easement typically would cost, in his opinion.
I question one thing that you said and how you said it, because I don't think we need to lock ourselves into having to buy right away, but I think we need to lock ourselves into considering if the right of way is a cost-effective way of doing it, buying our own. So that's a question we need to ask.
Yeah, yes. So I want everybody to get ready to think through that. We're gonna make a decision to do that as a policy statement. And we need to not get caught. This is the second or third time we've been caught in the same thing. And it's expensive because the utility is gonna pay for it. That's us. And we can move it out. So it's a simple issue in the beginning. We just gotta make sure we're thinking through it as we, move water lines.
I think it's reasonable to assume within a certain number of years, 16 will be 4-lane and maybe 92. So these issues are gonna keep popping up for future boards if we're not careful.
So we'll
Just
have that.
tie wrap it to the side of the bridge.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Any other comments or questions about that? That's gonna come back to us to make a policy decision on, that we will consider.
Do we have a policy now?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a policy?
I don't think so.
Not that we're aware of.
We put it, if DOT's there, we just have been jumping onto the DOT easement, and we need to not do that anymore.
Do we know, and I'm looking at you, and I know you just started, and you, but do we know how many times since the water authority has started that we have had a water line that was adjacent to that? You know, how many occurrences we've had of this in the past? I think it's important to look at, has it been a big problem? This is the first time I've heard of this, but has it been a big problem in the past? And then we can measure that by how much money it cost us to do that. So that going forward, rather than digging the same hole twice, we can make a better decision about where we want to see our, in terms of policy.
Just finished 2 on, Long Road.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Just finished 2 on Bond Road, with bridge upgrades in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Did we do it at Jordan Hill?
We did a Jordan Hill
Okay, yeah,
and,
we did. So,
Yeah.
I know when it started with the Water Authority, probably on the 155 widening. That was probably the first project that the county, or the authority started paying for water line relocations. And that was not a bridge, that was, part of it was a bridge, but it was that whole stretch from the 4-way stop at Jackson Road going north, where they widened.
When they widened the road.
155. But anytime DOT comes in and says, we've got a bridge upgrade, first thing they do is come to the county and say, you need to sign this agreement that you're gonna relocate your utilities. And,
See, we're,
I can't remember many more than the ones I've just talked about, but that doesn't mean, like on Wildwood Road, that the low-impact bridge is being done. We found out there's not a conflict there, so we won't have to do any water line there. There's one on Dobbins Mill Road that I don't think we have a problem, but we don't really know, and that's what we need to find out, is more in the planning stage of DOT, what you're talking about upgrading in the next 5 years. So
Right.
proactive plans can be made to make a decision, do we buy right away when we think it's gonna continue to expand? These small local roads, I'm not sure that's a big issue, because they're just basically rebuilding a bridge. But when you're on a state route, like Dick said, 16's probably gonna be 4-lane one day. What's that mean? We're gonna come in and do a parallel bridge? And if we do that, we need to plan to be way out of the
Where they
footprint.
may widen.
But we need input from DOT on what they plan to do, so we know how to widen that, or how to move that water line.
unfortunately, all these years, we've been out of the communications loop and just moving along, and we need to be in the planning loop before we don't get, I feel like the rat in the trap. You can keep the cheese, just let me out of the trap here. That's what we
You
are.
only find out about it when there's a project.
Yeah, when all of a sudden we got a bill.
In the pre-planning stage to say, how can we not have to duplicate our efforts in 5 years? Because in 16, that's the problem. If we relocate this line and stay in the right of way, which is what we have laid it out to do, and we find out they've got a 10-year plan to make 16 a 4-lane, we're gonna have to relocate that again. And DOT's not the easiest to get information from, so, you know, you're guessing a lot with them.
So we have the numerical data for those bridges that you guys talked about.
As
Over
far
the
as
last five,
the
yeah.
cost of it.
Right, and I'm looking at what it cost us to move those lines, and then what it cost us initially just to put them in. And then we can compare that to what we're saying is gonna cost to get an easement or
That's
maybe
right.
purchase an easement, especially on state roads where we know there's gonna potentially.
That's right. We need to make those,
So, the key thing is, everybody start getting your head wrapped around, because we're gonna start coming back in and saying, all right, we're gonna consider this one, yes or no? We're gonna consider this one, yes or no? So, everybody get your head wrapped around it, all right? Item number 10, new business. Discuss if the water authority should fund future fire hydrant installation projects or not.
well, I will say, in our planning meeting a couple weeks ago, the consensus was no. I think I'm speaking fairly for folks. I do think Joseph had an interesting idea about our own fire hydrant budget. Do you want to, let me discuss it, or you want, I'll let you if you want to.
So inside our existing budget, we put in roughly $50,000 to $60,000 just for fire hydrant repairs and maintenance. One way to allocate funds to future fire hydrant replacements are, in the event that we don't use that money, we could purchase hydrants and then have them installed either by our crew or have someone do the tap for us, depending on the location. But that's one way to fund hydrants out of our existing budget if the board is so moved to do so.
So if we didn't use the money, we could add a hydrant or two.
Yep.
That's a token gesture anyway, but
And-
otherwise, I don't think that's our business or our expense.
Well, what was the maintenance issue that we had discussed, or water hammer and things like that?
About their not
We
being able
talked
to do
about
it
the-
properly.
Yeah, we talked about the fire department taking over the maintenance, but then there was concerns about them busting water lines.
Well, that's funny. So we had that conversation on a Wednesday, and the very next day, we get a call from a resident over on the west side of the county where she left. She left her home. We were working in her yard on a fire hydrant. She comes back a couple of 3 hours later, and her house is flooded. There was a hose that came loose under her kitchen sink, and when I went out there the next day on Friday, when I was aware of it, there was no compression fitting, there was nothing that was holding that hose on the connection. So, was it our fault when we were opening and closing a hydrant? I can't say it was, I can't say it wasn't. I can tell you, after speaking to our staff, there was nothing that indicated anything out of the normal happened. When we closed the hydrant, what I was specifically looking for is, as you get really close to the final inch or so, sometimes you'll hear the wafer just drop. Well, that drop, that sudden closure, will create a water hammer effect that could reciprocate into their line. The resident didn't understand if she had a PRV. She just moved into the house roughly 8 months ago. So, to Wade's point, the fire department has talked about taking over fire hydrant maintenance, where they would go and they would check the hydrant. And their main focus would be making sure that they don't show up to a hydrant that's dry, that doesn't work. They're not necessarily worried about, is it leaking? Are the seals working properly? They're looking at it from a standpoint of, does it function properly? Are they gonna be able to hook up to it and get water?
So
I think there are two issues here. One is adding new ones, which I've already made my statement, I'm not in favor of that, except maybe a token. The other is who maintains them. Now, in the fire department, the fire tax, it does specifically mention fire hydrants. So they have the right to increase the fire tax to add hydrants for their use, not for ours. The maintenance is more difficult. I don't think there's any statute about who maintains them. And it's done differently, but generally, as I understand, water authorities are very leery about letting fire departments maintain hydrants in their line. So typically, I believe, water authorities do that.
What would be
But you gotta be careful who's trained, whoever does it. It's a difficult issue.
What would be cheaper, us doing the maintenance or us replacing a busted water line?
So, I don't
Maintenance?
understand
Us
what
doing
that
the
means.
maintenance?
I mean, you're talking Greek here.
If
You're
you
regular
create water
main.
hammer and you launch a water line up through somebody's driveway, what's cheaper to fix? Do the maintenance on the fire hydrant or replace the water line?
So why would,
It happens. I've actually seen water lines come up through asphalt. It does happen. If you shut down a pump or say you turn off a pump and the valve didn't close and the water tank decides to drain, all of a sudden, it's a significant amount of force. Significant.
so I'm totally in agreement with you guys that we need someone to do these maintenance, well, they need somebody to do these maintenance and repair items for the fire hydrant. I'm not opposed to us doing it, I'm not opposed to you hiring somebody who has the skills set to do it. I'm just saying that the cost of it, we need to let them know it needs to come out of the fire tax.
I still think we need to go by whatever the code says. If the code says the fire department is responsible for putting them in, the fire department should pay to put them in. If the code says they're responsible for maintenance, then they should be fiscally, if not physically, responsible for maintenance.
Okay. All right, county manager?
That actually leads to a couple of questions from the county manager's position. So if the county is installing the fire hydrants under the fire tax, whose asset is it? And if it is the water department's asset, then we put them in and give it to you, then that's a maintenance requirement owned by the asset.
I absolutely agree, and
If they put them in and turn it over to us,
Then
then
it be-
it's our property.
That's correct.
In terms of maintenance.
Correct.
So, what was it before?
Actually, the water department was putting in the fire hydrants and it was still their asset. And they were responsible for the maintenance. The opportunity for the fire department to use those hydrants for fire protection, it was just given as a courtesy by the authority. But the authority was also using those fire hydrants to flush lines and to do other maintenance requirements within our system. So who owns the asset would just be my question back to you guys. If the county purchases the hydrant, installs it, and they're responsible for the maintenance, then it becomes the asset of the fire department. And I don't
Mr.
think
Chairman, may
that's
I
where
make
you
a
want it.
suggestion?
Would you want the fire department to use something?
So, the same
I'm
way
serious.
the same way that we pay to have all the sewer work done in Highland Mills, and we turn the asset over to the city, which is actually all the lines, they're responsible for it.
Correct.
So if the fire department does not choose to do the maintenance, they can transfer that asset to us, and we would only be responsible for the maintenance, but certainly not for the purchase and installation.
Correct.
What is the asset? The little yellow thing that sits on top of the ground?
Yes, it would be the entire fire hydrant.
Valves.
Yeah, there's a valve goes down into the, Mr. Chairman, may I recommend this?
It's about 8
I,
feet long.
I think this is a more complicated issue than many of us maybe thought at one time. So I think you need to have a special committee to sit down, the county manager and legal authority and the fire department, and work this out and come back with a recommendation to the board, because we could sit here all day chewing on this one.
I agree. And, you know, we have certain amount of things that we're charged to do. We cannot just turn around and direct the fire department to do something. So we have to think through that this is a negotiation with the fire department on what we're going to do. We have to go to them, they have to agree to it. So there's a whole bunch in here to be able to, it's a great idea.
I'd be happy to serve on that committee if others want to join us, and we can sit down and hash on this.
All right.
And there might be a legal question or two that the attorney'd like to weigh in on who owns what.
General Manager, if you would pull a meeting together to talk about this subject?
Mr. Chairman, I don't, and Stephanie can correct me, I don't think this is a matter between us and the fire department. It's always gonna be a matter between us and the county
In
manager.
the county.
Correct, correct.
And I think that what generally we're saying is that if it is the fire department's responsibility to pay for them, it doesn't necessarily say you have to physically do that. They can contract for someone else to do it. We just might be who that is. But I think clearly, whatever the conversation is, we don't want to pay for hydrants.
Correct.
There's funding somewhere else. And I think that
I think
the
that's our
devil in the
consensus.
detail is just how we go about, because even if we do an agreement with IGA, it's still with the county, it's not the fire department. And
Correct.
I think that-
Under all circumstances, we
Yeah.
we just can't make the decision here and say, somebody is going to do that for us.
No, I'm saying only decision we can make is that we will not be paying for it in the future.
Yes.
It needs to be paid for by the fire department and the purpose of.
And we'll have to work out, yes, with the
Okay.
county to be able to do that.
And
All right,
that's
so
correct, but to Dick's point, having Chief Byrd or Chief
Oh,
Holt
yeah,
or someone
absolutely.
Oh,
involved
yeah.
in
So
the conversation.
that's why the general manager needs to pull this whole thing together. It's a number of people, the city, the county and all that. All right, so good point, Dick. Everybody,
And
this is,
I'm happy to participate in that
okay.
meeting
General
discussion if
manager, if
anybody
you'll
else
pull it
wants.
all together. And this is, come back to us and explain, give us a recommendation on what and how we want to do this. And anybody who wants to participate, please feel free to jump in there and if you want to get educated, fine. If you want to be driving to a decision of a certain kind, would love to have that too.
Mr. Chairman, if you would appoint a committee or accept volunteers rather than just saying come one, come all.
It's a good help for.
That's correct. We need
Yeah,
to post
so-
it appropriately.
I agree, it's better to,
All right, do I have a motion to create a committee to do this?
so move.
All right,
Second.
I have a motion, to have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 9-0, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Attorney.
And
Right, now that you've
so
got
I'll be
some
number
information,
one
would you like to create
volunteer, I keep saying that.
Yes, yes.
I don't know, who else wants to participate?
I expect the general manager to send out an email with the date and everything, work that out, and everybody just who
Don't you
wants
need
to
to
come.
appoint the
Yeah,
committee?
You need to
you've
appoint
got
the committee,
appoint
Mr.
the
Chairman.
committee. You just got a motion to appoint the committee, so you need to appoint the committee.
Yeah,
All
So
right,
Charlie knows who to send the doodle poll to.
all right, who wants to be on the, if you want to be on the committee, please raise your hand.
If you need me.
that's three of us.
All right, that's the start. We'll see from there. That's enough to get the ball rolling and come back to us. All right,
So you've appointed.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, I hate to be stickler here, but if you've appointed three, there are three votes in the committee, doesn't mean anybody else
Yeah.
can't show up, but if there's a formal committee, they have the votes on the committee, so.
I do
And
not,
our motion was to appoint a committee.
yes.
But no matter what we decide, it has to come before the whole
Yeah,
board.
but the
for-
committee generally has to have some vote and recommendation, so I just want,
I expect the committee to come back and say, here's our recommendation,
okay.
and then
Doesn't
we
mean-
will vote on that.
I don't wanna buy any more fire hydrants, just so everybody understands that.
Yeah,
I'm concerned about the maintenance aspect of it.
I agree with that. I think that's the tricky part.
That could cause us problems.
All
That
right.
could cause us problems, that's what I'm concerned about.
IGA.
All right, thank you.
all right. Item number 2, consider approval of the 2023 budget as recommended by the Planning Committee and the Finance Committee. On February 16th, 2022, it was the consensus of the Planning and Finance Committees to recommend approval of the FY 2023 budget up to $12,971,544.50 as presented by the general manager.
Mr. Chairman, at that joint meeting, Joseph went through the former budget, and he knew of some things that were gonna change, and he made those changes, and we basically approved to move forward with the best estimate we could in that time, so,
Do you have, are you making that motion?
I move that we approve
I'd like to
what
see
was
what-
brought forward.
I wanna see the red ink real quick.
All right, now,
Cause
okay,
Steve is gonna sharpen his pencil and make all these magical things.
Do we have a second before we discuss it?
yeah.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
And there's a lot of red ink, and Mr. Johnson can explain what's happening. We're getting hit hard.
Let's see how sharp that pencil is.
I don't see the red ink on here. Recommended is what Steve recommended, right?
That is correct. Well, yes, me and the general manager, that is correct.
And we're talking about, at this point, all I'm trying to get to is a bottom line number. $12,971,544.50 up to. I'm not trying to get into line item numbers.
Why you not?
What,
What have we got a line item?
well, can we let Joseph make a little explanation of some of the things that we're faced with this next year, because I think it's important, and I'm not sure how well they're covered in the budget, but I think he needs to talk about it just a minute before we vote, if you don't mind.
How much revenue we're gonna have in relationship to this budget?
We're gonna be in a deficit going into next year. So, one thing that hasn't been added to this sheet right here is the bond principal for, 2023, the bond interest, and then the CDBG Phase 2. So, when you look at the three projects currently on the books, you have the Jordan Hill, or the Flint River Bridge, relocation. You have the closure and decommissioning of plant number 1, and then you have CDBG Phase 2. Well, all those projects total roughly, what is it, 3.5?
3.376, $3,376,120.
That's right. So of that number, that number is the worst-case scenario. That assumes that DCA is not going to fund the project in time for us to, we're not going to have to expend that $1.3 million total. We're only required to spend $550,000. That was the match that we guaranteed for Phase 2. So that 1.3 will be reduced significantly by roughly $750,000. What Ms. Matlock just referred to that was the worst-case scenario, assuming we have to fund the DCA project and then we get reimbursed. Per Jenna's request, that's what she would recommend to do, because while DCA funds as these draws happen, Jenna just said to cover yourself, budget this way, and then you won't have a worry, you won't have any cash flow problems. So we will have a net deficit, and our operating account will go down by a couple of $1 million next year.
So I don't like that. I mean, because we haven't operated like that, so, and I know you said we have these three projects on the board, but clearly you budget for $10 million and you know you got $13 million worth of debt, then you need to adjust something somewhere. I just personally don't feel good going into a budget, knowing that we're already in a hole $3 million.
So to highlight that, right now, we have roughly $8 million in our operating account and $5.5 million in our money market account. So from a cash standpoint, we're sitting fine. The money market account, per the joint committee, was talked about, that being the reserve account. And I remember you at the committee meeting asking for a dollar value that should be in reserves. I talked to Jenna and specifically looking at the standpoint of, in the future, if we ever wanted to issue bonds for debt, for revenues, what dollar value or what type of cash flow, cash reserves would they be looking for to give us the most preferred bond rating? She said what's in the account now is completely sufficient. Nobody would balk at that $5.5 million in reserves.
So our fund balance is $5 million.
It's 13.
That's
$13
the
million.
money market balance.
Okay.
Yes.
The
So we have an
total fund
operating
balance
account
is-
and a money market account. So total cash is roughly $13 million right now. So even with these projects on the books, we're gonna still have $8 or $9 million in the bank.
So, what we know is that the profits in the water system next year won't cover the Flint River Bridge, the plant closure, CDB grant. So, we're in the hole, we don't have enough income next year to pay for these things that we're forced to pay for. So, the 12.9 is our normal operating budget plus those projects overall. So that is,
Correct.
that is the entire budget, and about, how much of it comes out of reserves, 2.5, whatever it is? Anyway, chunk of it comes out of that reserve fund because, or the operating funds, because we have to pay for those projects,
We
so
don't
it's
have the
gotta come from our
profit.
reserves.
We don't have the annual profit to cover it.
We don't have the annual profit to cover it, that's just the facts.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought that all this stuff was, I missed that meeting, that joint meeting, and I thought this was all covered at that joint meeting, and
Well,
you all
it
were.
was.
Well, it was, but there was a question mark at the end of it, because there were still questions to be asked of gentlemen.
Yeah,
So-
they
so-
haven't quite finished the budget yet.
So, I believe the budget is an intelligent estimate based on these 3 projects we must fund and the excess over our annual revenue. So I think the budget is where it needs to be, but just understand it's gonna pull money from our reserve account because,
Once the plant's closed, we're gonna we're gonna stop losing about $400,000 a year.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now,
So that's basically gonna pay itself back in about.
the real question for us is, are we going to, do we want to approve the budget up to, or do we want to stop and go back and do
No.
line item review?
well, we went through the line items and Joseph has done that, so I think we're as good as we're gonna get. And this is first go around with Joseph naturally, so we have a motion to approve that budget, which we've talked about, and I think that's our best work we can do.
And we know that we are expecting a reimbursement on the grant,
Correct.
so that will also go back into our fund balance.
Yeah.
But how much is the reimbursement gonna be?
$750,000.
So, I don't understand how we are gonna be able to get a balanced budget out of this. We should not submit a budget that is balanced. We should not submit a budget that shows that we're gonna be in a deficit.
No, it is a balanced budget.
So, in order for this budget to be balanced, we're gonna have to take 3.3, whatever it is that Cheryl said, out of fund balance.
Yes.
Okay.
And
It's balanced, it's just, but
We're
like
reducing.
Wade said, once the plant's closed, that $400,000 we've been using on it will stop being spent and we'll recoup our money, if you
Yeah,
will.
we'll recoup $2 million of that in about 5 years. It'll pay itself back. But that $1 million for the bridge, that's gone.
Yeah, that Flint River one was a surprise.
all right, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I would like to ask Joseph to do one thing for us.
Well,
Next year, could you also provide us a 5-year rolling forecast for financials? Like a 5-year plan?
okay. We're gonna.
Predict the best you can, capital improvements and things like that.
One of the comments that Dick made is, this is, we have a general manager now. He's getting his arms wrapped around it right in the midst of while we're trying to do this with the new county manager and trying to get our arms around the budget and everything else. This is a little bit awkward for us. I understand that. I'm willing to live with up to number in the budget.
This is the most intelligent discussion and in-depth discussion, maybe intelligent is a bad word, most in-depth discussion that's gone on in this group in many, many years on the budget and looking at the pieces, and I think that's
Healthy.
very helpful and a tribute to the folks being involved, so.
And I think after Joseph has had a year to actually work with these expenses, he will have a more realistic view of things and be able to make adjustments
Yes.
and know what he's dealing with.
And educate us. All right, Ms. Quinn, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
No, I just made it in my math.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, just a question. Can we look at an operating budget and then a capital expenditure budget?
Y'all are taking my whole financial report away from me.
So you pull the 3.4 million out of your operating budget and you put it in the capital expenditures budget. That way, you're not showing a $2 million deficit.
That's basically what he's done.
Well,
So,
I realize, but
Yeah.
the way it's presented, the projects will fall under a capital expenditure account. It's just this, the way the software spit it out, it's all cohesive. I would have to segregate, that out of it.
Your way's more palatable.
Yes,
yeah, I mean.
correct.
That way you can say, yeah, look, our budget, we're gonna have actually $1 million in revenue, but we're gonna spend $3 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Based on this capital expenditures budget.
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying. I
yeah.
mean, it just,
the,
liars can figure and figures can lie.
so the total revenue projected for next year is roughly like $9.3 million. So, we, in that joint committee, that was one of the things we were wrestling with, was that we're only projecting 9.3, and that's taken out the roughly $270,000 that we're absorbing in the rate increase from the city of Griffin that we're not passing along through the city or to our customers. So, yeah, I mean, it's the best that we can do with the information that we provided. And remember, these projects that are currently on the books for next year were on the books as of last year. So we're kind of dealing with the cards that were dealt right now.
I wouldn't say let's not vote on the budget, but what I would like to know is, like, on the commission board, we like to look at our fund balance and say, this is 45 or this is 60 days of operating expenditure. Do we not do that with the water authority when we talk about our operating expenses? So in real life, how much operational cash do we have in fund? I mean, how many weeks could we make it if we had on what we had in fund balance? Because, I mean, I'm saying that because maybe we don't need that much in operating if it's less than that.
That's a good question,
And if it were, then.
and we wrestled with that.
Yeah, then it would make it much, I mean, say we have 8 million in operating and it only costs us 6 million to do that. Then it'll be easier to put 2 million in capital improvement and then justifiably be able to cover that. If we knew what, you know, we had 90 days of operating or we had 6 months of operation. I wish I had finance.
All right, so do we want to delay?
No.
No.
All right. All those in favor, all those in favor of approving the $12,971,544.50 up to budget, please raise your hand. Okay, unanimously passes. Thank you.
May I make one last comment? I think, Gwen, the last question was excellent, but we wrestled with that question of how much should be in a reserve fund versus an operating reserve. It's kind of different. And we just didn't really come up with a good answer until we move forward and understand the better. So Cheryl's wrestling with that, and we are, but we don't have an answer yet. But I think this time next year, we'll nail those kinds of things down.
Yes. This is as you said, this is the most in-depth we've talked really and truly about where we're going and what we're doing. And it's a good discussion, and it.
I'll work on getting you
Yeah,
that.
so-
Yes, ma'am.
And once again.
Absolutely.
Good question. We just don't have a good answer yet.
If you've got specifics you want to talk, you know, you can either get to Cheryl, get to the general manager to be able to say, hey, I want to talk through this a little bit more. All right, item number 3, discuss the 2021 state water audit. General manager?
So in the last meeting, I misspoke. I said the audit was due March 31st. It was actually due March 1st, so we submitted our water audit on time, and the results have been provided for you. So one thing to note that our validity score was up just a tad bit to a 54. And the top 3 priorities that the water law showed was water imported, billed metered and unauthorized consumption. So I'm working with the city of Griffin on seeing if we can't address the billed metered and the unauthorized consumption. Imported water, imported metered, is not going to be cost effective, because that would essentially require master meters at every take point where the city's line stops and the county's line start. Correct. So, I mean, unless we want to spend $8 million to put those in, water imported is really not going to be a cost-effective measure. But I've spoken with Brandon, with the city of Griffin, and we have a process going forward with the billed metered and the unauthorized consumption. So hopefully we can start moving that needle in the next 12 months.
Okay. All right, any comments or questions on that?
How often do we have to have the, audit?
It's a yearly thing, every March 1st.
And we contract for someone to do that for us, or?
I did it in-house.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we save some money.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. That's all.
Another good thing for general manager. Yeah. All right. Item number 4, consider acceptance of the minutes of the February 16, 2022 joint committee meeting. I have a motion to adjourn,
I so
to
move.
approve. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. I understand that was an absolutely great meeting. Thank you all for doing that.
It really
All
was.
of us had perfect attendance.
Thank you for doing that. One more time, thank you for doing that. Other business, update from the general manager.
So one thing that was tasked was coming up with an asset value. So what you've been provided is a spreadsheet showing all the assets as quantified. So it goes through elevated storage tanks all the way to all the potable water mains. The total asset value is roughly $106 million. Now, the question is, how do we get this embedded in our budget? Well,
This is unaccounted for assets.
this is well, yes and no. So some of the assets on the books are in this $106 million. This is the total asset value based on the GIS file database.
Okay,
So
I'll make that.
the budget line does not reflect $106 million worth of assets on this Water Authority's budget or in our books for depreciation. When spoken to Jenna about this number, how do we get this fixed? She said that the auditors are going to require an approximate age associated with this asset. That's going to be more of a monumental task. So we're still working through a process on seeing what data sources we can use to attach approximate years to assets. But just know the value's there. Now we have to figure out how to get the correct depreciation in line for the integration into the budget.
That much
Does this
water
include
lines.
those subdivisions that we did not have in accounted?
Yes, ma'am.
Numbers before.
So this value was taken by extracting all the data, the assets out of GIS. So it'll take into account every fire hydrant, every meter, every large meter, every water line size, everything that we quantify, our water tanks. So that's what this value represents.
What presently does the budget represent of this?
I want to say it's no more than $30 to $35 million.
Okay.
So
It's stunning to me that over the years is, what happened is the people who built subdivisions, developments, put in water infrastructure, turned over the county,
Okay.
but they never turned over the financial value to put it on the county's books. So we have tens of millions of dollars worth of assets that have never been turned over and put into the asset base. It just amazes me that that didn't get done, but it didn't. So now our books, our asset values are way, way in error.
Just never moved it.
And you have these multi-million-dollar corrections to make. And so then you need to know if Flint Mill system was put in what year, how to depreciate that. And it is just amazing lack of information. And Joseph now is struggling with, how do you find all those assets, what year they went in the ground, and make the books correct? It's a lot of work.
So thinking through the process, one thing that could be done is with the use of, say, interns in the summer, we could have them go through the digital records of as-built that planning and zoning has, that community development has, that our department has, and then say, okay, well, this is the date of the as-built, and this is the area that was associated with it. So we're gonna have to work with the city's GIS department to get a field for year value, where we can start inputting that inside GIS, where when we export this database, we can now export the year and give Jenna exactly what she's looking for. But that's gonna take some time.
Do you have to have the exact year, or can you say within 5 years?
I think that's yes. When we say year, what we're gonna do is, if the system was phased, or say the development was phased over, say, a 5 or 10 year period, if we can segregate them in blocks, 5-year increments, I think that's sufficient.
It makes us look a whole lot different when you start talking about our assets and how big and how important we really are.
Like
all
when
of
we
a
were
sudden-
discussing the joint authority, we had this many assets and really we got 106 million. It would have been a total bollocksed mess, since we didn't even know what assets we should have had on the books.
So
Yeah, this is one of those things that Wade kept saying we needed to have.
Yes. So this is not a immediate action. This is something we need to start and know that this is gonna take us a long time to get done.
Yeah, unless
But
you
we've
can-
gotta start on it and
Unless
take
you can
that first
clone
step.
Joseph 2 or 3 times.
He got a good point using interns.
Yeah.
Where could we get an intern that would be able to do that? I mean,
Contact
nobody
colleges.
will come and spend 6 months counting water meters.
Archway?
Joseph could make a request for higher ed resources to the Archway Partnership.
That is correct. I've actually reached out to Brittany asking for that specifically.
Have you-
She's putting it out to there's a listserv for all students across Georgia that can acquire the information and petition for an internship.
Does everybody, I
As,
wanna make
as,
sure,
have this county had interns before? I don't know.
I can't answer, but I'm
We
sure they have.
Yes.
We've had them in finance, we've had them in leisure services.
There's one in leisure services right now.
Good. Because I
this
know
is an Archway-
the city's had immense success with a bunch of these interns.
this is mainly, what we're talking about now is an Archway issue with the University of Georgia. University of Georgia, the college education system said, you cannot graduate without an experiential training. The college kids are looking for how to do that. For teachers, it's easy, because they've always done it that way.
I got
But
one
for
of that problem right now.
finance people, finance people aren't used to having to go out and find that kind of stuff. And we have been using those people, the college kids, to come in and do things for us, and they are a huge return on investment. They're doing good college work, they're getting credit for it, and we're getting engineering drawings just about ready to go to be able to do this. Stephanie is the co-chair of that, and we can take this opportunity, see if we can get some of those young students who this is their course that they're going to do. They understand how to do the money. Let's see if we can't get them to come in and do this. So this is a golden opportunity. Now, there's other kinds of interns, but this is one, and if you've ever been around when they're doing it, you say, that was really a great job, and you see the student turn around and say to his professor, did you get that? I did a great job. So, things like that. All right. Thank you. This is a long-term project. This is not going to be done in the next year or two, probably.
Well, we hope it in next year so we can correct the books by a year from now.
Yeah, but I think it's gonna be going through a lot of data to go back. All right. Anything else on that, sir?
That's it.
All right. Discuss the water main repair at Jackson Road and Kennedy Road.
So, the city of Griffin brought it to our attention about a week and a half ago that the water line under Jackson Road at the Kennedy Road intersection shown in that exhibit is leaking inside the casing. So the line has been stopped, or the line has been segmented with the valves isolated. We're in the process of receiving updated quotes from 3 contractors, which right now are ranging anywhere between $17,000 to $30,000. But per the contract with the city of Griffin, any repair over 100 linear feet is considered a major repair. So that is the responsibility of the water authority to fix. So one thing that, without physically seeing the pipe, because the only way to bring that pipe out is to cut it loose and take it out of the casing, it's our assumption that what happened, this is a PVC line, so the line was overbelled as they were putting it in. And if it's one joint that was overbelled, all the bells were overbelled. So depending on what happens when we pull it out, I'm thinking we're gonna see a slit in the pipe. So our recommendation is to go back with ductile iron pipe under the road, inside the casing, where this will no longer be an issue going forward, and using field lock gaskets. So everything will be completely restrained.
How much?
Roughly 17, right now the bids are 17 to 30. I'm waiting to get updated ones. Right now they're addressed to the city of Griffin. I'm getting them to reflect Spalding County. And I noticed where all the contractors were not bidding on the exact same unit items, line items, so I've told them to adjust and make sure that they're quantifying the exact same thing. So we're looking at apples to apples.
Good.
And this is unforeseen maintenance, where going forward, what we say is, how we'll capture these things is using a contingency line item, where at the end of the year, we can run a report to show you, okay, this was our budget, this is what we projected, this is what was in contingency, so we'll start getting historical numbers going forward to give the board a better understanding of saying, okay, this could, historically, we'd be trending $15 or $20 or $30,000 a year on unforeseen maintenance. So we'll start gathering the data points we need to make good decisions going forward.
So I didn't really see a line item for contingency in that budget, was there?
It's not, because right now there is no, there hadn't been any money allocated to that line item. So this is not something that, unless the board wants to program a dollar value in there, this is not something that I would think that we would budget anything for. I think it's mainly just education for the board to say, hey, we do expect, or not expect, but we do understand that there could be some money that we have to pay for repairs that aren't included in our operating contract with the city of Griffin.
I mean, that's every year for us, right?
This is the first time this has ever happened from.
No, but I'm saying that thing, but there's always some other thing that is unforeseen that comes up.
I don't know if that's true.
Not necessarily. I would hope that going forward, our budget is accounting for as many unknowns as possible. Yes, ma'am.
Different way of saying the same word.
Yes.
Ms. Quinn.
How would you prefer to do it?
I think the contingency, just keeping track of it, would be a good metric, where what we could do is say, once we get a couple years under our belt if this contingency line item rears its head every year, we can give a budget and then say, okay, well, based on historical budgets, our budget could be anywhere between these two values. So give a range. And then we could go back to a zero-sum budget that you were referring to.
So, like, whenever we've had projects that come in, I've often noticed that in the bids, there's always a contingency amount that is either 5 or 10% of the whole project.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if we might be able to base whether or not we want a contingency and what that would be based on what our full budget is. So our full budget is $12 million, 10% of that is, tell me somebody,
Well,
20,000.
When we went through the budget line item by line item, we were looking and making an educated guess of, okay, well, we've increased utility expenses by what we think the upgrade or the MCI change is gonna be. We've already built a lot of that contingency into our budgets. But these repairs, we don't have any data to predict what these repairs would be or how many would happen.
I would generally say that repairs like this over 100 feet are unusual, because usually leaks and repairs are smaller pieces up.
Correct.
More than 100 feet's an unusual event, but like you say, after you collect this data for a couple of years,
Well, and so if this wasn't inside a casing and it was on the side of Jackson Road, what Danny and his crews would have done is cut out the bad section and redid it. But when this is a PVC line inside a casing, when you take it apart and you pull it out, you're gonna have to restring everything. And if it is a joint that was overbelled, you have to make the assumption that that wasn't the only one put under stress. So are we gonna, if they do this spot repair, are they gonna be out there within the next 30 days to repair another one? So I think it's just good practice on if we have the opportunity, let's go ahead and put ductile from fitting to fitting, and this becomes a non-issue going forward. And I noticed that GIS was actually wrong. It shows a 6-inch C900 PVC. It's actually a 10-inch PVC. So this, going back to the asset, that 6-inch PVC line was reflected in the asset list. So if we could get some interns, we could fix our GIS database at the same time.
All right, any other questions on that for the general manager? All right, item number 12, special committee reports. We'll start with Ms. Cheryl and the Finance Committee update.
Well, y'all pretty much discussed everything we did, but I will tell you there are a couple of things that we will be discussing again at our next one. One was establishing the money market account as a contingency or cash reserve fund. Also, the operating reserve fund of $8 million, Jim was talking about putting some of that into a capital reserve line, so that'll be considered. And the last thing is we need to continue to try to identify sources of funding for any future projects so that it's not all out of our pockets.
Yeah.
And I think everything else we talked about, we've already talked about.
Okay, good. All right. Planning Committee? Dick?
same thing, we've discussed most things, but let me just bring up a sobering number, my discussion with Joseph. We have way more issues and problems with the water system than any of us dreamed. From valves to looping to whatever. And he has a project list of everything that would bring our water system up to, let's say, perfect. $80 million worth of repairs to bring us to perfect. Now, that's his best estimate on all those projects. That's a stunning number, and I think most of us just assumed our water system was pretty doggone good. It's good, I guess, but not $80 million from being perfect. So what we're going to do moving forward is he wants to start working on the low-hanging fruit, as we call it, of repairs, whether it's a looping or whatever the issue is, and start whittling away at the items we can afford that have the most impact, the most cost-effective use of our money, and develop a capital budget every year to work on that list and improve things. It's a daunting task, but that's out there. And so we have $13.5 million excess cash, which we're burning through a couple $1 million this year, closing the plant. So we don't have much money, and to talk about then sewer, using that money to help start a sewer project becomes an impossible discussion until we figure out what we really need to spend on the water system. So we're not going to have a meeting today. I personally don't like meetings after the meeting because we kind of burn all of our wood at this meeting getting ready for it. But Joseph is working on that and the potential on the sewer side for an RSVP to have somebody look at the sewer possibilities and give us an intelligent idea on where to start and how to fund them and do some things. So all that's on the plate, and as soon as we get enough to really have a good discussion about parts of that, we'll be calling a planning meeting. But I honestly am sort of overwhelmed at what he's finding, and it's rough.
the importance of the planning and finance meetings are really essential, not just because we know one thing we want to talk about, but people come together and things start to be found out as we go along. So I'm recommending to the two chairmen of those committees, continue to have those meetings, continue to have people come in and sit and listen to them and do that kind of stuff. It's really important. And I know that us going to one meeting every month kind of works against that principle, but we've
Well,
got
if we're
to.
gonna do our jobs, I mean, and I will commend this committee, authority, I should say, on the wisdom of hiring a full-time general manager with not only an engineering degree, but his MBA has been more important so far than the engineering degree, I think. It's
Yeah.
been all these numbers on the finances, but this water authority is going to a whole new level, and I think personally just in time, if I may make an editorial comment.
No, I agree. And walking, chewing bubble gum at the same time, hard to do. You know, we're transitioning into doing that. All right? Item number 13, county managers' comments.
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. The county has contracted with Blue Cypress for our comp plan. The steering committee first meeting is tomorrow afternoon at 1:30. March the 28th is the first public hearing, and that is an in-person meeting that will be held here in the annex. And the following day, March the 29th, is a virtual meeting. If you would prefer to be a part of the virtual meeting, it's over lunch, so it's, I believe it's from 12 to 1, that will afford us the opportunity to input information for our comp plan for the first public hearing. The comp plan website is active. In order to get to that location, go to the county website, and you will be provided a link that will direct you straight to that comp plan website. That site will afford us the opportunity during and after our public hearings to accept feedback directly from our community for our comp plan update. As a part of this comp plan update, we are also doing our CIE, our capital improvement element, which will include our impact fees. Please come be a part of this. This is a big, wonderful opportunity for us to look into the future for what we want inside of our county. Thank you very much.
What time
That's all
is the
my update.
meeting on the 28th?
Please forgive me, I do not have that readily in front of me. I believe it is from 1:30 to 3, but I will provide you that information shortly after the meeting, if that's
Okay.
okay. Because I do have flyers, and I don't have the website up in front of
1:30,
me.
1:30.
So that's the community meeting?
Yes, that will be the first public hearing, is on the 28th and 29th. The 28th is in person, and the 29th is by Zoom.
And both of them are at lunch?
The one on the 29th is at lunch, and the one on the 28th is from 1:30 to 3.
So my only concern with that is that the general public works during that time, and so we're not really having this meeting where people who work can come in and.
Yes, ma'am, we are going to conduct a number of meetings that will vary in time from first thing in the morning until late in the evening, from 6 to 8. We want to make sure that we are providing everyone the opportunity to input on this important opportunity.
Firehouses.
We are looking to do public meetings at our fire stations across the county so that we can give additional opportunities for input into our comp plan.
Cities?
The city is involved with us. They are a part of not only the steering team, but they have all been invited to participate as contributors for stakeholder input.
Have you gone to the cities so far?
I've not. I've gone to Orchard Hill and Sunnyside. The next one up for us for presentation will be the city of Griffin.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment on this real
I'm sorry.
quick? I said RSVP, I mean RFP. It occurs to me that the discussion about getting an RFP to look at the sewer and what's doable, what makes sense, would be a critical part of the comp plan, because comp plans are often drawn with little or no thought to where the infrastructure is gonna be. That's reality. And that this county does all this comp plan and where they want growth, and that's not one of the opportunities we have to create some sewer. The whole thing is disconnected, and Joseph, among his many jobs, is talking about writing an RFP for us to look at for this. I don't know if we have time to execute that, get the study before the end of the comp plan, but it would sure bother me if the comp plan says do this and our sewer guide says, no, you can afford to do this, and the two don't connect, so. If we're gonna do an RFP, we need to get going.
Completely agree.
But
Mr.
we are where
Morrow.
we are.
We are where we are. We have we have an October 31st deadline for our comp plan.
Okay. All right, any other comments, sir?
That's
All right,
right.
let's start around with item number 14, authority member comments. Ms. Gwynn?
I would like to know where we are on our Water First plan. We were trying to, as you guys remember, we wanted to become Water First so that we will be eligible for multiple year CDBG grant. Haven't heard anything about it in the last 4 or 5 months. I wanna know where we are with that. The other thing is that I know that the county is doing their comprehensive plan and impact fee, restructuring. I'm wondering if there is something in the impact fee that talks about sewer expansion, in terms of, we already have a system here, but when new people come, we have to expand that system, and that's kinda how that works. So just a thought about maybe a possibility for a funding source for us for something.
That's an excellent point.
And I wanted to know, I meant to ask you this, did we budget for fire hydrants in this budget that we just approved?
No.
No fire hydrants at all? Okay, that was all I got.
He has sharp pencil over here next to me. Okay. Ms. Wanda? Okay. Okay. Ms. Fanny?
No, thank you.
Ms. Cheryl?
No, I've made all mine.
Okay. Dick, more comments?
I think that's a great idea about I was heavily involved in the original impact fee, spearheaded that thing, but I don't remember now whether sewer was included or not, but it would be an excellent question to be answered, because that could be a serious help for us.
Okay. All right, anything else, sir?
No,
Anything
no,
else?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Jeff? Jim?
Nope.
Wade? Okay. We have to, my only comment to this time is, we need to get it decided when we're gonna have our joint meeting. We're set up to have 2 of them a year, and we're at March now, and we have to give, I think, at least 30 days advance notice for the city, for us to sit down and have a joint meeting, and then talk through our agenda of that. I know you all are talking on a routine basis, but we need to physically get that, or make a decision that we're gonna go to the city and say we're not gonna do it for some reason. My answer is, we need to have a joint meeting, and I would like to do it by the 4th of July.
So we've reached out to the city of Griffin and proposed roughly 3 weeks of dates. We'll follow up with Brant to see where we're at on that.
Yeah, because this is, this is chairman, commission. This is not just,
It's not joint committee meeting, it's
Yeah.
joint commissioner.
yeah. So this is a big meeting, and we need to make sure everybody is on the wavelength. We all know what we're gonna do, what our part is, and how we're gonna play through that. But we've gotta get that done. That's part of our requirements that we do something about. All right? Any other last-minute comments, Charlie? You sure? Ms. Stephanie? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, so I have a second. Motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 9-0. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
It's raining outside.
Take that away from you.
You should have just seen it at one of the meetings, one of the chairmen just, I thought he was gonna break it.
Scared me to death.
It was gonna be a rowdy meeting, and he decided he wasn't gonna have one.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the city correct